today's episode I'm really excited about. We have Dr. Wagner from the University of George Washington with us today. And the reason why this one's really exciting is when you think about where we are in innovation and disruption right now, we're really in a space of energy disruption. When you think about where energy comes from, where your electrons are coming from, or your molecules that are coming from in your fuel that's powering what you do, that's coming almost always from a rural community. As such, most rural communities are on the front line of change. And a lot of these rural communities, including us in Estevan, we're only one or two, three industries that keep us going. So what we do moving forward will help our community stay alive for a long time. One of the things with Estevan is we are a coal town. So a lot of the electricity that powers Saskatchewan comes from our coal. That's our story, but I want you, no matter where you are, just to listen to this idea because in general, it helps you look at innovation so that you become the disruptor instead of the disrupted. So that's why I'm really excited about today's call. So with me today is Dr. Wagner. So thank you for joining us. Shall I call you Michael or shall I call you Dr. Wagner?
Mike is fine.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So before we get into this cool project that you're working with us on, which is turning our coal into graphite, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves, where you're from, how you ended up doing what you're doing?
Well, I'm a Army brat, so I was born in Germany. Frankfurt, Germany. I never actually lived there. I lived in Darmstadt at first. And I traveled most of my life with my parents, my family, for, I guess, the first 16 years. I'd lived overseas more than in the U.S., in Asia and in Germany, mainly. Big family, 6 kids. Well, modestly big nowadays. Small compared to my mom's family, which is 9 kids. So, compromise there, I guess. So I ended up in Oregon when my father retired from the military and I was in high school. I went to University of Oregon because I was kind of tired of moving. And so it was the local university. And chemistry, I majored in chemistry because it seemed like you did something with it. I like other subjects, but the hands-on aspect.
Oh, your sound is cut off, Mike.
Is it cut off?
Oh, there, now you're good.
Interesting. Okay, I'm not sure why the sound's cut off. Should we start again or?
No, keep going.
Okay, magic of editing, I guess. Okay, or maybe not.
Just talk about how chemistry was what drew you in.
Well, chemistry in general, a change and the ability to change something. Chemistry and physics and engineering, for that matter. I'm not purely a chemist. I sit kind of in between chemistry, physics, and engineering.
Interesting.
But chemistry drew me in because, well, things like, magnets sticking to refrigerators is magic. Colors changing, magic. Solutions turning to solids, it's all magic. So understanding that magic was interesting to me. But also, it seemed like there's a practical aspect to it, too. Many fields don't have a direct to an 18-year-old practical aspect. So I chose chemistry for that reason, too. I graduated from the University of Oregon and went on to Michigan State. I went there to work with a member of the National Academy of Sciences who recently passed, unfortunately, because he had some unique research. The idea is electrons being anions in solids, electrolytes and alkalides. Now, people probably having their eyes gloss over at this point. They're esoteric materials, which were interesting to a chemist and physicist, but probably not so much for an engineer. The applications are fairly limited. But one thing you could do with them is use them as very good reductant to make nanomaterials. So when I came, I went to MIT first. I worked for Dr. Mark Wrighton for 2 years, and then came to George Washington University. At Wrighton's lab, I was working on solar energy and LEDs, organic LEDs, layer by layer deposition. Here, I decided to work on nanomaterials using alkali reduction. So we're trying to make materials that were not just materials that are interesting to us, but have some practical application. Right. So in that case, you have to have something that's better than something else. And nano reducing the size of things down to nanometric size, to 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 nanometers, can lead to quantum effects. So the physics changes. And that can lead to interesting and potentially useful property changes. You have the quantum LED TVs now from that. We were looking at other materials. We were looking at magnetic properties for things like magnetic refrigeration, for room temperature refrigeration, for catalysis, for thermoelectric materials. So you produce electricity with heat gradients, or you produce heat gradients, heat and cold. So your water chiller, right, heats up so fast for your tea and cools down so fast for your cold water in both the same instrument, is because thermoelectrics. We're working on the efficiency of those. So there's many materials we're working on, nanomaterials, because they potentially could be better than anything else that's currently out there. Well, we unfortunately didn't find a whole lot that was better. We do have an MRI contrast agent I'm really proud of. But we worked on batteries a bit, and found that we could potentially have advances there by using nanomaterials in the anode. So what we're trying to do there is try to charge really fast and discharge really fast, and run at various temperatures, the lowest temperatures. Because batteries, even today, lithium-ion batteries don't run well below 0 degrees C. So if you're
being in Canada, driving an EV, I fully appreciate what you just said.
Yeah. So the problem is, part of the problem is the graphite itself. The graphite in the battery, in low-cost electrolytes that can operate below, say, -5 C, will destroy graphite, exfoliate it. So the graphite is like these layers of cards stacked. You can imagine that graphite be a deck of cards. You can hardly tear the cards, very, very tough, but you can pull them off one by one very easily. Well, the solvents that are inexpensive, that work well at low temperatures, go in between the layers of the graphite and make it mush. They exfoliate it. They lift it off and turn it into non-graphite, into graphene, a layer of graphene, which doesn't do well. So what we made was these nanospheres, nested spheres of graphene shells. And these can charge extremely fast, and they can discharge extremely fast, and they can run in propylene carbonate, which is low temperature solvent. So we run down to -30, -40 degrees C. Can be charged and discharged. Unfortunately,
what became of that work?
Well, we worked on it some, but it may still have something to it. The capacity is less than that of graphite, which is unfortunate. But there may still be something to it. But on working on those, we found that made them bigger and bigger, the capacity became closer and closer to the graphite, except the ends were closed. You can imagine these spheres collapsing down because they get so big. So you have these sheets of graphene, like graphite, covered. The ends are all hooked up because they're spheres, right? So they don't exfoliate, and they can run at low temperature, but they get graphite type capacities. So we try to make them bigger and bigger and bigger. And at some point, they just turned into graphite as we did it. And that's how we ended up with graphite. At first, we were like, well, this is not good. We're not really trying to make this. But as we started, yes, absolutely.
So graphite, continue on.
Well, graphite is a material that's mined, and it's made commercially by a, not such environmentally friendly process, but it's made in large quantities. So for a chemist to make something that's already well known, a commodity material, is not exactly exciting. But we looked at the energy inputs and the quality of the graphite. We kept, doing one more test. We found the graphite was extremely good quality, and the graphite was looked like it'd be very cheap. And as it turns out, we had a little bit more luck than just that. So we looked into the graphite, but we also looked into the revolution in lasers. We're making this lasers. Lasers go back 30, 40 years. You don't use them industrially very much. But in laser cutting in the last 20 years has taken off. Laser cutting, welding, hardening, even heating to dry things is taking off. So the laser market has gone down precipitously in price, and the power of lasers has gone way up. So we lucked into the laser market coming at the right time for us too. We also lucked into the need for graphite, there is a potential shortfall of basically, it's been predicted that by 2030, we'll have our production will all be used by cars, or the amount of graphite we produce in the world will be only enough to use for EVs. So every other application will be out of graphite. Now, that's not completely true because graphite is different grades of graphite we use different things. So there's going to be disruptions across the market, not just in cars.
Right, because graphite's used from pencils, industrial lubricants, I guess all the way up to a reactor of a nuclear
I can show you a little slide here if you like. So let me share the screen here. Give me a second here, window, and right here. So graphite itself, we're mainly interested in automobiles. That's a big growing market. And so in a graphite battery, in a lithium-ion battery, on the right upper side of the screen, I guess it could be left, could be reversed. Is it reversed? Right upper side is a graphite battery, a lithium-ion battery. It has on one side a graphite, which is Li-X₂ at the bottom labeled, and the Li1 - XMO2 is the cathode. We're interested in the anode, that's the graphite part.
And cathode anode for just interrupt, but the cathode anode for people who don't have a background in science is the positive and the negative side of a battery.
Yes.
Right.
And there's no actual lithium in this preferable. When lithium, actually lithium metal occurs in a battery, it's not a good thing. So there's no actual lithium, and there's lithium ions, lithium plus, so individual atoms that have lost an electron, lost one electron. And they go back and forth, shuttle back and forth. Now, this graphite's not just used for this, it's used for all the markets down there. The natural graphite and synthetic graphite both have different markets. Synthetic graphite is more expensive to make, but it's used largely in the electrode business where they make these huge electrodes for metallurgy. And in the process, that's the main application, but they will shave these down and have excess scrap graphite for other purposes. The natural graphite is less expensive, but synthetic graphite is what preferred for EVs because it performs better in electric vehicles.
I didn't realize that. Interesting. Okay, cool.
They blend natural graphite in two at this point too. It's just for cost and the lack of synthetic graphite.
So just to interrupt there too. So where is most synthetic graphite produced in the world?
China, I believe.
Okay. And same with hard rock natural graphite. There's only one graphite mine in North America, and that's in Quebec, and it's running into some issues. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
There's the production of graphite, and China leads by a long shot. But it's not just that. It's that China, all the graphite from lithium-ion batteries eventually passes through China for sterilization and coating. If you want lithium-ion battery graphite, you pretty much get it from China at this point.
Okay, that's interesting because I was just talking with a Canadian National Research Center, and they have a call to action out there for lithium because all final processing of lithium in the world must go through China. And there's a call to action within the Canadian government to create a process with unique IP. So I'm sure the States is exactly the same thing, and I'm sure graphite's exactly the same thing. So it's interesting.
Yeah. China has seen the lithium-ion battery market as being very important strategically and acted as they can with their governmental system. They can take a market and decide that they're going to be a player in the market.
But to be clear, China doesn't actually mine graphite. They just bring it in or make it synthetically?
No, they mine it. They mine graphite. They're the biggest mine.
They do?
About 70% of the graphite mine in the world is in China. They mine a lot of graphite. They make a lot of synthetic graphite, and they produce all the graphite final products in China. There was there's been a number of attempts to make lithium-ion battery graphite outside of China, but Chinese have the market cornered at this point.
And one thing I noticed with your graph, the only country that can even appear on that graph that's in North America is Mexico, but neither the United States nor Canada show up on there. So
the last graphite mine in the United States, I believe, closed in 1980 or so.
Right.
Graphite mining is not a pretty subject. It's involves a lot of purification, because when you mine graphite, this is kind of what you. This is probably not commercially viable because the graphite potential is low here, but it does show you that you have this large rock and these black specks on there of the graphite. They're marked.
Right.
You don't get a vein like you do with coal, except
Right.
apparently Sri Lanka has a vein of graphite, but it's not much of it. But mostly you get a lot of rock and a little bit of graphite. 20% is pretty good. So you need to lift all that graphite off of there and dissolve the rock out. So it involves a lot of hydrofluoric acid and other nasty chemicals that is very, very deleterious to the environment. And
from what I understand in Quebec, that's one of the issues that the current mine has in Quebec is concerns about pollution. So yeah, there you go.
I wouldn't want to live next to a graphite mine. If you Google graphite mine, you'll get a lot of pictures of coal mines, but very few pictures of graphite mines, because graphite mines aren't pretty.
And just to help a few people, so I went down this rabbit hole to help explain a lot of people, is when I was looking up graphite mines, there was a line there that said graphite is an element. And I was scratching my head, and like from my schooling, I can't remember graphite being on the periodic table. And then when I did some research, this is so funny. And then I think this will help people understand. The symbol for graphite is C. So essentially what we're doing is mining carbon, but we call it graphite when we mine it. Is that pretty much accurate?
Well, graphite's a particular crystalline structure of carbon. It's the most stable crystalline structure of carbon that there is. So you have buckyballs, were famous 20, 30 years ago in the news, these spheres of carbon, pure carbon, of various sizes. Graphene is in the news a lot. It's a single sheet of graphite that makes up graphite, this single sheet of carbon, pure carbon. Graphite is just a stacking of those sheets, and ordered stacking, not just stacking the sheets. It can't be disordered. It's got to be shifted just the right way so that carbons snuggle into each other to make the graphite structure. If you have a lot of defects in it, you have what's called hard carbon. And hard carbons were first tried for lithium-ion batteries, but they've been left behind. They don't perform as well as lithium-ion batteries as graphite does. So there's no going back to that, I don't think.
Interesting. Is there anything more you want to share on your screen, or shall we go back just to the big screen, you and I?
Well, let's go back to the big screen for a second here.
Okay.
And let me stop sharing here. And there we go.
So how did you get to the place from where you found out, you bumped in or made a mistake that you can now create graphite using a laser, to the point where, you reached out to Estevan and said, hey, your coal is great to make graphite. Shall we walk that path there?
That's a little longer story than
we'll make it words. Coal Phillips version.
But let's try. We're making bigger and bigger spheres and ran into graphite by our process. We followed the science where it went. We found graphite. So we were making it with biomass. The reason why we're making biomass is because there's a lot of effort out there to char biomass and get the oils off of them. You can produce relatively inexpensive oils to be upgraded to things like heating oil or to diesel. Unfortunately, you can't beat the cost of petroleum, though, very easily. And so at the same time as they're producing the oils, using to produce electricity or further convert as chemicals, they're producing a lot of char, like charcoal. And the idea was to try to use something with that charcoal, do something with it. It's a high carbon content, which why we're using it, making carbon materials with it. There's ideas of putting it in the land, but I'm not so sure that's going to work out. There's land amendment for farming. It's not really taking off, as far as I know. Yeah. So we're trying to upvalue that from the value of char to the value of something much more valuable, and that's why we produce these lithium-ion battery materials. We're producing graphite with it at that point. And so we thought, well, how good can we get with this? And this I'll probably need a couple slides.
Okay, go for it.
And so the road to graphite for lithium-ion batteries is steep. You need very, very high purity, 99.95% carbon. So that's extremely high purity. Appropriate crystal size. It can't be huge flakes of graphite. It's got to be small flakes of graphite, around 10 nanometers, 10 microns, I'm sorry. So very high crystallinity. It's got to be crystalline graphite, not a hard carbon, very much a highly crystalline order. Appropriate shape has to be spherical. The reason why it's spherical or curved is because when you put the graphite into the slurry to put it onto the electrodes, when they're doing their roll process, making the big rolls of these electrodes for the batteries, it has to smoothly flow. If you imagine a stack of cards, a stack of cubes or squares, you'll put them down and they'll have a lot of surface area inside that's not covered because it'll stack up like a house of cards. Spheres, on the other hand, or something that's rounded, will slip against each other and fill space better. So it has to be spherical. Now, the flakes themselves are still flakes, still flat flakes, but you have to compact them into spheres. And so the flat flakes are all, the spheres are composed of these flat flakes that are all pushed together to make agglomerates of them. And a very low surface area in the end, too. So what we were doing was taking plants and making biochar and bio-oil. Bio-oil is valuable. You can burn that to make electricity. Electricity can run the lasers. You can run the biochar, and you get graphite. And that's graphite we made right there. There's 50 microns graphite. That might be appropriate for something like a refractory material because the morphology, the purity, there's a lot of properties of graphite that are very particular to particular applications. And so this graphite itself is probably good for a refractory.
Yeah.
We can make these flakes of graphite, very thick stacks of graphite, very high purity. We tested. Well, wow. We start out with biomass. Biomass generally tends to be very high purity anyway. Carbon and oxygen and hydrogen and a few other elements in there. And so we made high purity graphite. That's just, you almost see the layering. You're not seeing individual layers when you see on the right-hand side, but you do see it's a layered material.
Yep. I can see the lines there.
Now, what we found also that we could control the shape of the graphite. This is an important thing. Remember, in spherical graphite. If we process it right, we can take wood char and turn it into graphite that looks very much like wood char. Hasn't really changed.
I can see that. Yeah.
And so we can preserve the shape of the material, the agglomerates. Now, that's composed of thousands of flakes of graphite, but overall, it looks like a wood char. And
so essentially, what the laser's doing is it's zapping the wood char to leave and get rid of everything else, like the hydrogen, the oxygen, or whatever's in there as a organic molecule, and just leaving the carbon in the same place that it was when it was wood char. Is that accurate?
Sort of. There's a catalyst involved as well. We use an iron catalyst. The iron catalyst actually does the job. The laser provides the energy to the iron catalyst very rapidly. This is extremely fast process, by the way.
Like how fast?
Milliseconds.
Wow.
Fast.
Okay.
Very fast. Here's spherical algae made in the graphite. And you notice the graphite has the algae itself on the right-hand side that became graphite has flat surfaces on the outside. That's also important for lithium-ion battery. The surfaces, the flat surfaces, be towards the outside. And that always happens with our graphite mixtures. So we thought, well, okay, can we design graphite to be like lithium-ion battery graphite?
Oh, you're cutting out.
And we'll start with.
Hold on a second. Oh, there you go. You were cut out there for a sec. So start again on this slide. Yeah, continue.
This slide? Or?
No, we got you on that slide, and then you were cutting off there. There you go.
Okay. So we decided to try to actually engineer the graphite. We wanted to make graphite that looks a lot like lithium-ion battery graphite. Okay. So we sphericized some biomass, and with the spherical biomass, we made graphite. These little flakes, these little pellets of graphite. And you see the size distribution on the right-hand side, and you look at them on the right-hand side. And the slide's been messed up. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
The biomass graphite is on the left. The commercial graphite is on the right. The surface areas underneath are almost the same. Less than 4 is good. Flakes, again, see the flakes are all oriented towards the outside, which is important. You can see it, the same thing in the Hitachi, the Magi 3. And here's a bigger picture of it. You see some flakes, they peel off a little bit, but mostly it's these spheres. And when you test the batteries, this is a charge and discharge. You look at the potential of the battery, the voltage of the battery, as you put more electrons, more lithium on into the cathode, anode or the cathode. And so you're watching the voltage as you do that. The capacity, the voltages are almost identical to the commercial. Okay, the red line is dash red line is commercial, and the biomass graphite is the black line.
Okay.
If you look at how many cycles you run these at, this is run over 150 cycles. So you charge and discharge 150 times. And again, the capacities line up right along with them, and the efficiency of the battery lines up right along with the Hitachi. So essentially, we've replicated the commercial lithium-ion battery graphite.
So just to Cole's notes that your biomass graphite, not only does it look under a microscope, shall we say, I think that's the simplest way to say it, the same as existing commercial grade graphite, it behaves exactly the same. So that validates that the shape is good enough for batteries.
Yes, and what we didn't do to our material is put it through a conventional process like this. They take flake graphite that they've mined and then used HF. And my understanding is that graphite mine, 60, 70, 80% of the graphite will be fines, but useless for things like, except lubricants, principles, something like that. So maybe 20, 30, perhaps 40% might be useful for things like lithium-ion batteries and for refractors. And so they take that material and then they have to sphericize it. So these flakes have to be somehow made into conglomerates of spheres.
Right.
And the loss is apparently, my understanding is 70% loss is a bit old number. It's more like 50% now, but it's still a large loss that they have in the material. So the material price goes from very cheap to very expensive very quickly.
Sounds very wasteful. So they take that rock that you showed a minute ago, they get the graphite out of it, and then even then, they have to put it through this process, and after that, 50 to 70% of that gets tossed. And so it's not pretty efficient.
After this, after they've even gotten through the sphericize it, they have to final purification of it and a final regraphitization of it is possible, because when they've slammed these crystals together, they've upset the crystal in order to some extent, and so they need to heat it again, and that can be expensive. Northern Graphite, by the way, has a great write-up on their website on the processing of lithium-ion. But just shout out to them for that, because I learned quite a bit from them.
Nice. So just to be clear for everyone listening, this whole thing that you're showing on your screen right now, this whole conventional graphite shaping, doesn't happen with your biomass graphite.
No,
process.
We graphitize, we keep it. We don't.
So 100%, 99%.
Well, we're a laboratory, so we spill stuff sometimes.
There you go.
But it'd be very close to 100%. Yes.
That's amazing.
Okay, so why don't just do biomass is the question. And perhaps go back to the screen for a second. All right. So we could just do biomass. That's true, and we looked into that. But there's an issue. If you cut a tree down, it grows back in 40 years, give or take. Right, yeah. Okay, and you cut a tree down again, I haven't seen a whole lot of studies on this, but that can't be great for the soil to haul the trees out. It also isn't great for the environment because you're hauling the trees out. Biomass from trees, you have to go, pellet factories operate with an 80-mile radius, give or take, I think it is. So they're hauling these trees in, these logs in, and chopping them up and sending them over to Britain, I guess, to be burned instead of coal. And that doesn't seem like an environmentally sound thing to me at all.
The marketing would be pretty brutal. Buy this battery. It's made from trees. By the way, the trees were clear cut. There's nothing left there. So your ESG score is terrible. Yeah, getcha.
Well, some of them actually say they're being environmentally sound by selective cutting. So they cut, regrow, and only cut it 40-year cycle. But if you cut trees down and you need global warming solutions today, 40 years cycle is not going to help you much. In fact, it hurts you because you're taking the tree out of the environment and burning it.
Right.
And you look at the biomasses. Generally, biomass is spread out. If corn stover, we tried corn stovers, and it works fine. I mean, we have good graphite on corn stover. The problem is farmers generally like to keep their corn stover. I mean,
Yep. I'm
it's
sure our listeners understand that they need to put that back in the soil so they can have good soil for the future, right?
yeah, and trees probably should be back in the soil too for good soil for the future of this forest. So it seems to me now you could use switch grass and all kinds, but these things don't really exist in bulk as far as I know. And anything you do with biomass, you end up having a distributed supply of carbon. It's not compact.
Yeah, and we also have, and back to that, the biomass coming, say, from farm, there's this whole valid argument, fuel versus food, and which is more valuable to society right now for production of that land. So yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense where you went.
I'm all for planting trees. I'm all for planting grasses. I'm allergic to grass seed, but other than that, I'm all for planting more material, more greenery. That's great. I'm all for farmers, but farmers don't want to be inundated with biochar. They don't want to pay the price it costs to make it, and they don't want their corn stover taken, or their wheat straw, or anything else that helps the soil, or silage. There's some markets that might be possible for biomass. But if you want to look for biomass in one place that's already been concentrated for you, there's a place to find it. Let me share again to show you. Biomass, lignite. It's biomass. It's been processed by the earth for a while. It's absolutely biomass. In fact, if you look at it under a microscope, you see a lot of similarities to biomass. It's not fully cooked. It is lignite. We could use peat too, but lignite is well developed in the United States and in Canada, in the world, in fact, for energy. Now, it's cheaper.
I just want to jump in for a sec, just to help people who are listening. Just so that there's all these different types of coal, and there's lignite coal, which for burning to make electricity is probably one of the worst because it doesn't have as much energy in it. And part of that reason why it's one of the worst is it's barely fossilized peat from prehistoric times, which makes it valuable to you, right?
Almost nobody calls peat coal, and a lot of people don't call lignite coal. The coalification process, the process of going from very low carbon content to very high carbon content, anthracite, which could be 95 to 100% carbon, close, very high carbon. Lignite is a stop along the way. It hasn't got anywhere. 30, 40%, maybe 50% carbon, and a lot of water. Depends on the lignite. But if you look at the lignite under a microscope, you still see the plant-like material there. It hasn't really gone away. They're called masterals. And it's cheaper because you just, if you're in the right place, say like Estevan, and you put a shovel in the ground, you get coal. And you get a big heaping pile of coal. So it's very inexpensive to get. Supply chain is.
That's a really good point. Sorry to interrupt again, but that's a really good point. Where you find lignite coal, it's in soft soil near the surface. You're not having to blast granite to go way down to get at it. So it's not just cheaper, but its environmental score, its ESG score, would be a lot better, shall we say.
Oh, in an area like Estevan, where you're taking off the overburden and then taking the coal out and putting the overburden back on, reclaiming the land, you've got the land back. You've just taken out, 2-3 meters of coal from the bottom?
That's right.
So you might have sunk the land a little bit. How much? You may even pull it back up to the same height as it was before. I don't know the details of that. But
no, that's what we do, and we have cattle. And we have, farming on previously reclaimed mine land, right? And it's not as hard, again, as seeing open pit mine where you have to, that whole process is crazy. Continue.
You're not sending miners down to, Kentucky mines a mile underneath the. So, it's relatively safe too.
And there's not much methane release either. So again, your ESG score is good. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So supply chain is there. So if I were, say, to make go to somewhere that has a lot of pellet factories and collaborate with them and make some graphite from the trees, moving that graphite is not as easy as what you have in a coal mine. In a coal mine, you typically have railheads right to the coal mine. Typically have some way to transport that. You have power already there. You have water already there. You have land that you can build on already there. You're not building in New York City, not building Manhattan here. I'm pretty sure we can put some kind of structure outside the coal mine in Estevan, and it wouldn't be a problem. Transportation is minimized, and there's a lot of co-products. So remember I told you about the oils and that you come off when you biomass char. We get the same type of oils here. Well, they're different oils, but they're still oils, and they're very valuable. So you get the oils off and the gas is off. The gas can be turned to methanol if you want to. Or it can use a hydrogen. You have a hydrogen project going, I understand.
Yes, we have a hydrogen project doing the same thing, but continue. We'll have that on as another episode.
It can just dovetail together, basically.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of advantages to coal or lignite, rather, over other sources. Lignite that can be mined reasonably well, has a large supply of it, and has partners that are interested in trying to make this work. And that's where Estevan comes in. Estevan is a good partner and was enthusiastic about having this work with them. They have everything we need for a graphite mine. So we're going to try to do it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. And just to fill it in with other things that are happening in around our community, just to have others inspire to look at other things, is we're using existing oil and gas, because we are an oil and gas community as well, technology to take the brine from underground that's high in lithium. And we now have Arizona Lithium shipping lithium carbonate. So now we have lithium, and now we have graphite. Those are the two major ingredients to battery manufacturing. And like you said a minute ago, being a coal mine, we are already connected to a rail line. For us, it's CP Kansas City that connects Mexico, Canada, and the United States all into one line. So, from this idea, we are actively looking at different processes for battery material. Like you were mentioning, how everything has to go to China. What can we do here? Along that same line. So, but if people want to know more, you're coming to our Critical Minerals Conference, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So April,
yes.
Yeah, awesome. So April 23, they can come up to Estevan and hear your presentation and talk to you in person.
Absolutely. I believe Fostech also produces lithium iron phosphate in Canada.
Who does?
Fostech isn't they located in Canada, Ontario, or I can't recall. Look them up. Fostech, I believe.
Okay, pull them up. We can just read.
Yeah, I think they produce. Let's see, Fostech Lithium Inc. Well, anyway, I believe there was some production of lithium iron phosphate in Canada at some point. But in any case, it's very possible to get all together. Now you got to remember that when we mine the coal, the biomass, or whatever, and make graphite out of it, the volume is dramatically lowered. When gases and liquids go out, and we move the elements. So transportation out is not as bad as transportation in. Transportation in, where we have to gather all the trees or biomass, is more of a problem because it's the volume and the tonnage involved. The graphite going out will be reduced from that. So you'd rather have good transportation going out and a local supply of graphitizable material, of carbon ore.
Yeah, and what I really like about this too, using lignite coal over these other biomasses that you talked about, we were talking about how there would be a challenge to access it, where communities such as Estevan and others around the world are having their coal mines shut down because of the energy transition. So it just collides perfectly well, where a community who has a coal culture can continue with their coal culture, but in a way that will be profitable, and in a way that like for a while, 50, 100 years, who knows. And then also it allows for spin-offs as well, right? Because before we were turning our coal instantly into electricity, very valid, but now we're using our coal to make things. And what other spin-offs can we get from that? Not just battery manufacturing, but who knows what will happen to the future? Like this whole thing about graphene, like when and if that finally becomes something, that'll be amazing.
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it's broke, fix it, right? And so it's not a matter of throwing it away. It's a matter of fixing it. You have a coal mine, everything already producing, everything's running well. You have the equipment, you have facilities there. If you're to produce something, graphite or something somewhere else, create a graphite mine, you got to produce everything over again. You've got to recreate all of the mine. You already have that. So if you can fix the output to be something that's still useful and still acceptable and a future product, you're much better off. So why throw away this beautiful coal mine? Why not just use it for an alternative sources of coal or graphite?
And not only that, we have a community that wants a mine, an active mine right beside them. And as we were just talking about, like, for example, the Quebec mine, there's so much nasties involved in that. A lot of communities that live an ideal life right now, and someone comes knocking on the door saying, hey, I'm going to do this graphite mine right beside you. By the way, it's going to have all this pollution. Or there's a graphite deposit somewhere off, in British Columbia, away from any workforce, right? That's remote. You then have to bring in that cost where we already have a workforce actively working and ready to go. So it's just a perfect win-win.
It's a monetary cost and it's an environmental cost, because you have to factor in the fact you may be building roads, you may be building an entire town to have people there. All this adds up. Rather than using what you already have, making a mine, a remote mine somewhere in Alaska or in British Columbia or wherever it might be, has with it environmental costs that go beyond just the mining. And the mining itself is nasty too. The mining is extremely nasty, where coal mining is relatively benign, the way we're doing it here.
And then the other thing is, as you were saying earlier, the need for graphite. Do we have enough time right now to go out and find new deposits, go through, like in the States, your EPA, in Canada, Environment Canada, certification and all that stuff? You're talking, and then get funding and all that stuff. You're talking 10, 20 years. We're taking an existing coal mine, within 2-3 years, that coal mine can become a graphite mine and instantly solving the current problem that we're under, especially in North America, where we've lagged behind other parts of the world when it comes to this new type of technology. We can't sit around and wait any longer. So there's just so many levels of this that is impressive and gets me excited.
Yeah, I agree. We're at a nice fortuitous crossroads where the stars are aligned for us. That we have laser prices coming down dramatically. We have the graphite, the coal industry having some issues, because if you're selling coal left and right and there's no problems, you may or may not want to convert over to graphite because you already have an existing business that works. Why take any chances at all? You have a graphite need in the industry that's tremendous and growing, and there's no way to actually satisfy it at this point. The existing and the anticipated supply falls way short of what we're going to need. So it seems to me that it's a very it's the right time to convert coal to graphite.
100%. And it's also just, you and I had on another conversation. It sounds like one of my heroes is one of your heroes, and this kind of leads to this. And you were lucky enough to hear him speak, but John Be Good Enough, right? And he is the creator of so many materials, including that of RAM, but all these iron, lithium, whatever, all these different types of batteries. And you were mentioning how that is now all being over in China.
Yeah.
Right. So North America, the United States created this IP, yet we've now fallen behind. And so again, I just put this in the bigger picture, is that wherever you sit on the political spectrum, this is about making money, right?
Yeah.
And bringing back, reshoring, shall we say, that IP back to North America. So without a graphite mine like this, it's going to be really hard. Because like I was been saying, and you've been saying, all this graphite's coming from China. So if we want to bring back this manufacturing, we got to bring back the resource here, right?
Jobs and families. Comes right down to it. If you lose industry, you lose all those jobs and you lose the support for the families. It's a disaster. You need to make sure that you have the strategic materials you need for industries locally, so that North America can sustain itself strategically. This and other strategic materials need to be sourced in North America.
Yep. Like imagine us having a conflict. Well, even just a simple trade conflict, which is starting to happen now with China, and all they would have to do is say, I'm going to shut down your whole electronics industry, not just your new EV industry, but your whole electronics industry by I'm refusing to send you graphite. Like that, we're in trouble.
We're back to iPhones that are this big.
Yeah, with transistors and wires instead of, definitely.
Huge batteries, so, and even that we can't produce right now anyway. So you need to make sure that globalization has its advantages in efficiency, but you need to make sure that you have everything you need to survive regardless of globalization, because trade wars do happen. We're seeing one right now.
100%. So, Dr. Wagner, you will be attending our Critical Minerals Conference April 23 in Estevan, April 23, 2025. So if you're listening to this later, I'm sorry. But you'll be presenting and people will be able to also have an opportunity to speak with you one-on-one.
I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for inviting
me. Yeah, and we're so excited to have you. So thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it.